Hello, Rusty. Thanks for joining us.
Hey y'all.
It's good to see you. I'm a big fan of your channel. Do you want to tell folks what channel that is?
It's TCA Gaming.
And so I've been watching some of your videos. I know Jake has been in touch with you for a while. And if I understand correctly, you are like a full-time Pokemon card seller. Is that right?
Yep. Well, all this is back here. Just my Pokemon shop connected to the house.
Wow. And so you have your own store and your own website, but you also sell on eBay and Amazon. That's right.
I don't sell on Amazon, but I do have affiliate market links that sell out through them. So, like if somebody goes to one of those links, I might get a little bit of a kickback.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I want to ask you all about that. I'm hoping today that we can sort of pick your brain and learn more about the Pokemon market and kind of what are your thoughts on it right now, and also about your, your world and your work specifically and what it's like to be a full-time sort of seller. But before we do, tell me, like, how did you first get into Pokemon? What was your story?
So, I guess it started when I was about 10 years old. That would have been the year 2000. I was in fifth grade. I remember seeing some kids on the school bus. They had some cards, and to get those cards, you had to pay roughly 50 cents a card. I think the first one I ever got was a Fossil Kabuto. And I remember coming to school and I had $5 and I got 10 Pokemon cards, and then that was it. I was trading, for the next several years after that. So
Nice.
eventually I got out of it and went into Yu-Gi-Oh and girls, and then I got back into it when I went to college. But that's a long story if you want to hear the whole thing.
I also got into Yu-Gi-Oh for a brief period of time. But yeah, so I guess when did you start sort of doing things at like a high and sophisticated level, dealing with like high value cards or high volumes?
When I graduated in college in 2012, I realized I could probably make better money with buying and selling Pokemon than I could if I was going to use my education degree. I was going to be a high school math teacher. And so that's when I went into it full time. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've never had to really deviate from that.
Wow. And so what was the journey like of like getting started? I mean, were you first just buying and selling in lower volumes, or sort of went all in and made like a big upfront purchase of capital?
I had nothing. So, like, when I started in buying and selling technically in 2008, I had like a fossil set, a base set, and a jungle set, and none of those were complete. I think base set I needed like a Clefairy. I think it was Articuno non-hollow from Fossil that I needed, and there was a couple hollows in jungle. But back then, those sets were worth like you could get Fossil sets for $5 in auction all day long. I used to go in and buy the Fossil first edition booster packs. A guy would sell them for $20, and you could get 10 of those packs. I mean, you're basically paying $2 a pack. So back then, it really wasn't worth a whole lot of money, but you could still buy and sell a little bit. So I bought and sold, and it just grew over the years to basically where we're at now.
Yeah, I guess that's a part of it that I'm very curious about. Is like before as many people were in the hobby and before all old stuff appreciated as much as it currently has, right? You still there was still like money to be made in reselling because you think it was just an inefficient market. Like people would be buying, willing to buy from you at a higher price than the deals that you could find.
In a way, I mean, back then there was still a market. It was just really, really low. I remember it was Shining Charizards and Crystal Charizards. You could get $10 to $15 a piece all day long. I
Wow.
used to I used to focus on base set Charizard because I saw the best margin with those. You could find base set Charizards all day long for $10 or less, and then I would resell them for $20. So for me, that was a good margin, and it was almost an endless supply of cards. And that's where the Charizard Authority come from because I would focus on Charizard.
Nice. And so I'm curious, like probably everyone's wondering, how much of those cards did you save, right? Were you just flipping all day long or you put aside a little stash for the future?
Well, I was buying and selling pretty much all day long, except for, or up until probably about 2013. And that's when I started my booster box collection. My very first purchase on eBay was through my brother. I have an older brother who's in the military. He bought a base set box for me for $100. And I just set that thing aside. And that was the only thing that I kept set aside until probably around the 2013 uh, time range. And then I started setting back more sealed product and PSA cards and ungraded cards because I saw the potential of them going up because I had a better experience uh, or a better feel for the market, and that a lot of this stuff was getting more and more rare. And it shouldn't be the same price as the packs that are coming out, currently. the older stuff, I mean, it had been out of print for over a decade at that point.
Yeah. And so I'm curious what it's like, to do this for a living. I imagine everyone's job is stressful, but particularly when you're an entrepreneur and you own your own business, it's not just that like your current quarter's growth or profits are on the line. It's like that is the livelihood that you and presumably your family rely on too. And so have there ever been periods where you were sort of worried that like you may not make it, you might have to go in and supplement your income or get a totally different job?
Honestly, no. And the reason I say it is probably because where I come from, I mean, we basically lived off of almost nothing. I mean, when I moved up to the area where I'm at now, I mean, our family was starting over, and we lived at Loman's Motel, Loman's Motor Court, if you want to Google it. It's pretty much the worst motel around, but you know what? Our family loved it. We were a family of four that lived in just a single room, from a motel for several months. And then eventually we moved into a 2-bedroom house where we had a lot of people coming in and out of there. But I mean, I didn't even have a shower until I was in high school. And the only reason we got a shower is because my brother, who was overseas fighting the Afghanistan and the Afghanistan, war that happened, he just had a son. So him or his wife and his son moved in with both me and my brother and my mom and my dad. And I used to sleep on the couch, and then those four would sleep in our bedroom. My mom and dad had their bedroom. So, I mean, we were used to living off of less than $10,000 a year. And I always knew that with this Pokemon stuff, it's ridiculous how much money people are, really pay for it. And if you think about, how essential it is. So for me, the cost of living versus what I could get out of the Pokemon stuff if I needed to liquidate was, it always outweighed it. So, and it was going to be better than if I went somewhere else and, worked an hourly wage, whether it be, $10 an hour or $20 an hour. It still wasn't going to outweigh what I could make if I was reselling stuff, online, or just selling the extra stuff that I have.
Yeah. And have folks in your life generally been supportive? Like they see sort of how well you're doing with it, or they think it's like not a real job?
Uh, for the most part, it's almost irrelevant because, like I said, my dad, he's disabled, and my mom, she's now on disability, but she's been out of a job since 2005. And so for them, the fact that I was able to take care of myself was great. And the people probably on my wife's side of the family, at first they thought it was a joke, but again, they can't really argue with it either because, to be honest, I've helped them out a lot with stuff. And around here, people, I think they see that when you're on your own and you take care of yourself, I mean, they don't really have a say in what, how you deal with things. I
Yeah.
remember
And now I see you have a family of your own too.
yeah, that's my boy right there beside me. But like, I remember when I was in college, I had a buddy. His dad would get on to him about buying Pokemon cards, and I said, why does it matter? It's your money. And he said, well, he's the one who pays for my college, and he pays for these other things. And I think when other people pay for your expenses or they pay for your cell phone, then you have to worry about what they're going to say to you. But I mean, I've never really had anyone to pay for that kind of stuff. It's just always been able to take care of it and not be in debt, so I didn't have to worry about liquidating. I think you're a slave to that money debt if someone else is controlling where your money's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty incredible, by the way. And so now that the market is doing so well, and presumably you have, a bunch of investments, not just things for flipping. Like, are you ever tempted to just cash out, just be like, sell the whole thing, try to retire early?
Yeah, I've been there, but you know what? I'm one of those guys that always needs something to do. Like, even right now, like, I'm ready for this workday to be over so I can get outside, and I've got a 1968 bulldozer, and I've just been trying to work on that thing. It doesn't have brakes, doesn't have a top. It's probably the most dangerous contraption out there, but I want to figure it out, fix it so I can use it, and I want to build in a basketball court on my land, which is basically wooded area. So I mean, it's one of those idiotic things, but for me, I'm always want to stay busy and do something. And I think if I cashed out, then I would just want to get back in time anyway. So right now, I just sell the things that mean not as much to me or already have. And then if I ever get to that point where I need to sell the higher end stuff or the items that are more valuable to me, I'll do that because, in the end, Pokemon is below, my family.
Yeah, yeah. But that being said, I guess I'm curious how much, your love of the cards or the general franchise has persisted. Like, do you feel like doing it for a living has made it more, like you see a Charizard card and you're like, in the past at least, this is a $20 bill, or today this is like a $2,000 bill. It's not memories, it's not fun, it's not, a tool for a deck. the way that other people see it, or has it lasted?
Oh, I completely get where you're coming from there. I mean, some of these cards I've just seen so many times, it doesn't have the same nostalgic feeling that it does, or it used to have. But, you know, what I try to do is if there's things that I really like that are really rare, I'll try to just set them back and forget about them. So if I ever get to that point, um, I have these binders that they're just set back. I'll just go and look through binders and look at cards that I haven't looked at in a while. And sometimes just that smell or the turning of the pages and hearing the crackling of that going through the binder, that takes you right back to where you were. And it's not just the artwork that's on the card.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the cards that are in those binders that like still do it for you?
Honestly, I like the original stuff, the base set and everything, because that's kind of around where I was. However, I like Neo Genesis, I like Expedition, those artworks. I was getting more into, I remember Neo Genesis first edition. That was the very first booster box that I opened up. In fact, it was the only WotC booster box that I opened up for probably until when I opened up that first edition base set booster box on YouTube. So, I mean, I didn't open up that much stuff because I always knew it'd kill the value. But that set, and that reminds me of my childhood because I think I was about 12 or 13. I had a few friends that we collected and we played outside. You know, we used to take our decks and just try to battle out on the at that motel. We'd go sit out in front of like doors that people weren't renting out, and we'd just battle out there on the concrete. And we did that all day long. And I had a friend that would take me to the Toys R Us, and so it was around that era that I remember those cards. Some of the Gym Heroes and Gym Challenge stuff, I remember that. I remember getting Misty's pre-release cards from leagues around the time. And promos. Promos are my biggest thing. I love the promos. I never actually went to the movie and got one of those, but that's just one of the things that, for whatever reason, whenever I see promo cards, it takes me back to the original Pokemon for me when I was collecting as a kid. It reminds me of Pokemon leagues at Toys R Us. We used to have a media play. I don't even know if those exist anymore. And it was just always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess part of the appeal for me too is just like get what you couldn't have as a kid, right? Like as a kid, this stuff was relatively expensive, and especially if you were living off your parents' monies, I think most kids were like it was hard to ask for a lot of it, right? And so you're like now I can have 20 of the Misty Cedra's promos, or I can get all the promos from the movies I could never even go to as a kid.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying there. From my childhood, I actually still have my father's binder. I remember for a short time there, my father actually collected with me, and he used to like those old vending stickers. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about there, but you could basically put 2 quarters in one of those machines, push it in, and it would pop out in one of those little plastic ring balls, and they were always crumpled up. But every now and then, there was other places that you could get them in cardboard, and they'd be flattened out. He would collect those. He would collect just different cards, the Japanese ones, because he liked how they were older. And I kept his collection binder, all these years because, again, it just takes me back to that time. And stuff was expensive. Whenever we'd go to, some place to buy a pack, I'd always ask my parents to buy me a pack or two. And, you're talking about you could get 3 packs maybe for $10. Or you're talking about, for us, I mean, that could have been an entire meal for our family. Whereas a lot of times we'd just do potluck, which was, for us, most of the time it was dirty rice. It was just hamburger meat mixed in with rice. And honestly, I mean, you can get down with some hamburger meat and some rice and some cayenne peppers my dad would grow. But, I mean, it was nice too to have a pizza or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for sharing those memories. It's so cool to learn about how other people grew up, and especially just how this like shared hobby was part of it. So now to get into the financial aspect of it, like what is your explanation for what is going in the market right now, and why it's so crazy?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of factors going on with the market. For me, typically June is a pretty low month. So I'm expecting things right now to taper off and plateau for a little bit. But that has a lot to do with the fact that people are going to be out there and, going on vacation or whatever. But what happened, the past 3 months, yeah, it did partially come from COVID. Maybe people were, you know, surprised at how Pokemon kept going, but you got to think people weren't spending money on football games or other types of entertainment. They had extra time on their hand. They were shopping online. It wasn't just Pokemon that exploded. Basically, anything online, really went up in value. I mean, you had the stimulus checks that went out, so people had a lot of extra money, from not going on vacations or doing, events out from like where they might go to a bar or something and watch a ball game and spend money there, or going out to eat. I mean, a lot of people go out to eat, several times a week, and that can really add up. So, I mean, I think there's a lot more discretionary income that was coming in from these few months where people were shut in. And also a lot of the stuff, like these old Watsy boxes, I mean, they have been out of print for a long time. So, I mean, there are still people opening them, you know, for the reason to flip for money, but also because they genuinely like the stuff. So, I mean, the supply is continuing to go down. I mean, and I think this is a lot of the same points a lot of other people have already hit on, but it all makes sense. And I think with the summer coming now, and when things start to open back up again, I expect the market to start plateauing just a little bit, maybe even retracing a little bit, but I don't expect it to come way back down like we're in a huge bubble or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. For me personally, and this is a debate Jake and I have sort of had, like my opinion is I don't think we're in a bubble, but I am worried that there's going to be like a big, not just retrace, but actually decline due to macroeconomic factors, right? And obviously nobody can predict how long this recession is going to last, how bad it's going to be. But I guess what I'm worried about is that potentially this is going to be like a really, really bad recession. And if some of those economists were true, like on par with the Great Depression. And if that happens, I can't imagine us not getting to the point where people just start like fire selling their collections, right? There's like, I literally don't have a job. I have to feed my family and pay my bills. Whatever people will pay for it, like that's what I'll take. And at that point, right, the value of all these things will go way down. Do you see that as a possibility? And is that something you're worried about?
I'm not personally worried about it, but I could see it happening for certain items that people are just buying based on speculation. It's not going to happen as much for items that are truly rare and that people buy because they really want them and they're putting them back in their collection. Like, I don't see that happening like really bad with stuff like Watsy boxes, because there's just a handful of people out there who are going to be completely set with their funds anyways. And if say a Gym Heroes box goes from $8,000 or $9,000 back down to $5,000, there's just those handful of people could buy out the entire market when they try to resell them or fire sell them. So I don't see it happening with something like that. Something like Hidden Fates, where right now you got the shiny Charizard GX SB49. It's went back up in price. Last I checked, it was like $800 to $1,000 for a PSA 10. It had dropped all the way down to $500 before everything shut down. I personally had over a dozen PSA 10s come back for customers just with this wave last week, but I have so many. I bet I have over 100 of those things out for customers right now. And I'm just one guy submitting on a bulk submission service. I can see there being thousands of those things at PSA. Once those things come back, something like that that's not really that rare, but it is popular. I mean, people are going to want the card. They're going to continue to buy and sell it. I can see it coming back down once the supply starts to level out, in the market, because it's not really that rare. And we just had a huge reprint through the 10s, and there's even more being submitted. So, I mean, I think sometimes you just have to wait for the market to catch up.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And if I understood the first part of what you're saying correctly, it's basically there is a price floor for a lot of the older stuff, right? Like if those Gym Heroes boxes you mentioned go down to 5,000, like there'll be people who are willing to snap it up at that price, right? Because they just want it, right? And so at some point, like things won't get below a certain value before the collectors who are just waiting for a good deal will take it.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. So speaking of that, like I know that you do a variety of services. One thing I saw, you submit PSA cards on behalf of your customers. Is that right?
Yes.
And so they can take advantage of like the bulk deals.
Well, I have a different price than what PSA has. I upcharge, each one of the service levels, because for me, it's not worth it for me to handle someone else's card and take responsibility if I don't have some upside to each one of the cards. So like for me, the lowest option that I offer is like a $13 price tag. Whereas if you want to do it yourself and submit bulk, I think they've got a $750 special or something like that right now.
Right. But then you have to meet the bulk quota yourself, right? And if you do it on your own, I think it's like $20, right?
Yeah, something like that. Plus you got return shipping, and you got to label it, and then you got to, put in the card saver and that kind of stuff.
And so are you one of PSA's biggest customers, like on behalf of all your customers?
I doubt it.
Do you have like some kind of relationship with them or not beyond just the transactions?
A little bit, but honestly, half the time they don't care. I've worked with them a few times. Like they gave me store credit for a Lucky Stadium to help out with a monthly giveaway or something, and I talk with them on different things. But most of the time, I can't get anything done from them any more than someone else can.
Hmm.
Like I've got issues right now with a few cards that are mislabeled, and they've agreed that they've been mislabeled, but I still can't get them to take them back because I mean this is an issue that's been going on since January. To give you an idea.
Right, right. Understandably, I think. So, have you ever been really like freaked out about something? Like, have you ever lost like a big chunk of cards? Has anything ever like gotten wet in the rain? Right. I just imagine like for me personally, I'd be freaked out dealing with high volumes, high value items, especially on behalf of other people. Like, do you have any horror stories to share?
I haven't had any issues with like damage coming to other players or other people's cards other than someone damaged. Well, at PSA, a card has been damaged before, and I was able to get that taken care of. But I did send someone's order to the wrong place one time, and but it was able to get rerouted and taken care of. So I mean, nothing so far. Fingers crossed, has really messed up with customers' orders.
Yeah. Have you been a victim of any scams?
You mean like with PSA or just in general?
Oh, just in general with
Yeah.
buyers or sellers.
Yes, I have, and I've had to file affidavits and police reports a few times before. Probably the worst one that was more recent that was kind of scary was I saw a Black Lotus Alpha on PSA or on eBay. I should have known it was a scam looking at the price, but it was signed by Christopher Rush and it was for $12,000. I snapped it up in the first few seconds that it was on there. And like I said, I should have known it was a scam, but I talked with the guy and on eBay like after I bought it, and he seemed legit. Everything was going okay. When it arrived at my local post office, it said it was delivered and signed for by the person while I was sitting at my house. So I knew something was wrong there, but I know my postal workers. I know them very well. That's the reason I go there. And I talked to him. I said, "Hey, what happened? I didn't sign for this, but I'm showing right here that it was." And the only package that had been signed for that day was to KFC. Apparently, KFC has a post office box at my local office. So what the scammer did was they took that item and they shipped it to KFC and had KFC sign off on it, but at the PO box, where I was at. So my postal worker actually went down there, went to KFC, got the package back for me, brought it back to the post office, and we recorded everything. And I had to file police reports and everything to get the money back, but I was covered. And the problem with something like that is it actually shows delivery and you say you don't have the package. A lot of times the scammer can get away with something like that because it actually shows delivery and you're claiming that it wasn't. And a lot of other people ended up losing out money to that person.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I got lucky. I mean, I really wasn't lucky. It was thanks to those to my postmaster and the postal workers that were there because they pulled up all the information for me, and not many places would send actually drive down to the place down the road and go retrieve the package that they just delivered.
yeah, absolutely. And so what is one of the like highest volume transactions you've ever done, buying or selling?
Well, I mean, the base first ed box, I mean, that was 62,900, and then the second time it was 65,000. But I'm actually meeting up with Collector's Cash at the end of this week. I bought a Black Lotus Alpha from them, a legit one, and that was right at $70,000 that I paid for that one. But
Wow.
I haven't done many 6-figure, 7-figure stuff. I mean, there's several collections in the works right now where I'm offering 6 figures. It would take time for me to pay off. I just don't have that kind of money laying around. I know a lot of people might think I do from the stuff that I show on YouTube, but no, I mean it's something that I have to work at, and hopefully those deals go through. I've sent out some offers before for that high, and I've been declined. I know it sounds crazy for Pokemon, but it's just the way it works sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you one last question. What is a card or booster box right now that is overvalued, and what's one that you think is undervalued?
Well, I don't like the value of Skyridge, but it makes sense. A lot of this stuff is optimized right now. I think the boxes that are overvalued to me are the ones from the Diamond and Pearl and Black and White era. And that's just because maybe I just don't connect to them. But to me, they shouldn't be earning $1, $2, $3, $4,000 when a box like Unlimited Jungle is still earning only about $4,000 in an auction. One that's undervalued, it was Neo Genesis, but that one's not undervalued anymore. I mean, it's getting up there. I still think Neo Revelation is a little bit undervalued. For the cards that you can pull, the quality of the cards, I get emails from people saying, hey, I just graded this Suicune first edition PSA 10. Would you like to buy it? I opened it from a pack. And I've had that happen for Suicune, Entei, Raikou, Blissey, and Feroz, and for both of the Shinings. And this is all recent. And all those cards are bringing several $1,000s. A lot of them bringing $5,000 plus. And
Wow.
you pull them a lot. You can pull them at a lot higher rate within the box itself. And last time I Neo Rev box sold, I think it was around $15,000. Expedition is my favorite. I don't think it's undervalued, but I wish it was valued more. It has increased over the past, but I think it has potential for growth.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will let you get back to the baby and your family and your work, but really appreciate you taking the time. It was really, really interesting to hear your story and hear some of your insights.
Well, anytime. You feel free to send me questions through an email too if we didn't get to it all.
Yeah, we'll see if any of our viewers have questions for you. We'll pass them along.
All right,
Take
man.
care. Bye.